Tonight on Real News from the Blaze, it's back to the future for France when the first socialist in 2 decades is about to be sworn in as the president of that country. So, Will Kane, why is this election important?
Well, it's possible it's not. It's possible that while the voters of France think they just voted for spending cuts, the bondholders of the world laugh and go, no, you didn't.
It could be the economy.
But it could be very important and signal the beginning of the end of the Eurozone.
All right, all that and much more on Real News from the Blaze coming up in just 60 minutes.
This is not going to be about politics. This is about principles. We're going to take it upon ourselves to be part of the solution.
We are going to restore history, restore our honor, restore his idea that character is what matters.
Let us not lose this battle because we sat down.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Well, hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck Program and to GBTV, the network that you are building. Hey, who would have seen this coming? Greece is on fire. We'll show you the cool Nazi stuff going on there, too. The Nazis are growing in power. We'll show that to you here in just a minute. But also, we have to tell you about the Occupy Wall Street that attempted some terrorist attacks last week. We have an update on that one. But here's what I want you to remember. This is important. The Tea Party is the answer. When the Tea Party came into existence and held its first major rallies all across the country on Tax Day 2009, we never saw it coming, the media's first reaction. It was first to ignore it and then give them no coverage. But when they realized on 9/12/2009 the Tea Party wasn't going away, they then turned to mockery and a weird fascination with perverted teabag sex jokes. Also, fear-mongering. Every day we were told, strangely, we didn't understand why at the time, that the protests would cause angry, anti-government, racist, right-wing extremists to lash out in violence. And it was nonstop. Watch.
My fear is that the Tea Party gets a charismatic leader because all they're selling is fear and anger.
Right.
And that's all Hitler sold.
I mean, here you have a man of color in the presidency and white people showing up with guns strapped to their waists.
I'm not going to be surprised if we see somebody get a chance and take a chance and really try to hurt him.
If you're unwilling to cut defense and give up the empire, you don't really care about the debt. And you have to admit you're just a racist, sore loser. Here's your hat.
The new right, an emerging fact of life in 21st century America. Tea parties, birthers, patriot groups, militias. Their common enemy, the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Okay. You are going to understand why they did this tonight, why it was important to do this. It's going to come together for you. What they tried to do is they tried to wish Tea Party violence into existence. They even made up stories. I was responsible for the death of somebody going door to door. I mean, it was incredible what happened. Yet nothing happened. They didn't even leave trash bags laying around. We cleaned the National Mall. It was nicer when we left than it was when we got there. The reality was the exact opposite that the media portrayed. But the lies still continue. In the Southern Poverty Law Center Spring 2012 intelligence report on America's hate groups, one of the biggest concerns they highlight is the stunning growth in the Patriot group. They define the Patriot movement as, quote, conspiracy-minded groups that see the federal government as their primary enemy. Now, that's interesting. They say that this Patriot group and this Patriot movement has grown 755% in the last 3 years alone. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center's mission says, quote, we track the activities of hate groups and domestic terrorists across America, and we launch innovative lawsuits that seek to destroy networks of radical extremists. So, of course, they're monitoring Occupy Wall Street, right? Because that thing's spreading like wildfire. No. When the National Review called and asked them, do you have plans on start tracking the Occupy Wall Street movement? Especially in the light of the fact that one of the occupiers in Cleveland was arrested with 4 others, and they were trying to blow up a bridge. That is the definition of domestic terror. The answer was no. And the reason they provided was because, well, we only deal with groups that have, quote, a hatred of people based on class characteristics. Wouldn't it be like rich and poor? Wouldn't it be like the 99 against the 1%? Isn't that? No. According to them, that's just a person's eye or skin color. The source also said that the SPLC only tracks those who, quote, commit violence or seek to destroy whole systems in the name of ideology. Okay, this is exactly what they're doing at Occupy Wall Street and Occupy Cleveland and Occupy Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Oakland. When the spokesperson finally gave an honest answer, we knew the truth. Quote, we're not really set up to cover the extreme left, and added that they only cover left-wing groups when there's a right-wing component to them. Oh, okay, well, you have tons of credibility now. So what are they doing? They're marginalizing, they're isolating and polarizing. And they're also at the same time trying to keep Occupy off the history books in a bad way. Why? Because Occupy is going to play a crucial, crucial role. If what happened in Cleveland happened in the Tea Party, you and I both know that the networks would be wall to wall. The Tea Party is boiling over. They already did go wall to wall, even though it was a bunch of average Joes hanging out with grandma in their lawn chairs. Last week, it was discovered that 5 Occupy Cleveland protesters, 5, were arrested for buying C4 and bombs from an undercover agent and then trying to blow up a bridge. They actually took the fake bombs they thought were real and placed them under the bridge. Here's your update today. This wasn't some infiltrators who weren't really part of the group. One of the 5 suspects, Anthony Hain, was actually the person who signed the lease on Occupy Cleveland's warehouse headquarters. Well, so then you're not a nobody if you're signing the lease. Not only that, once the occupiers learned of the arrest, they were concerned. About violence? No. Let's go to the videotape. This was videotaped by one of their members last week.
We have a person facing terrorism charges on one of our leases. You know? Yeah. No matter if we switch it or not, we have a potential media disaster, right? Can we all agree that spending $600 on the warehouse, even though if we switch the name of the lease, if this were to get out, isn't that a potential huge problem?
It would be if the media wasn't complicit. So they immediately tried to switch this guy's name off the lease and replace it with someone else's name. All right, play a game with me. You're a news editor, and someone brings you a story of an actual terrorist who tried to blow up a bridge in Cleveland and had signed a lease for the official headquarters of a major movement. And then the group is on videotape saying, this is a huge problem for us if anybody finds out. And they try to cover up the lease. Do you, as the news editor, cover that? Yeah. Obviously, that's huge news. Anyone without an agenda would see the news value in covering it. But they're not. Why? Well, let me go back to where we started about a year or so ago, to Samantha Power. This is the wife of Cass Sunstein and self-proclaimed champion of fighting genocide around the globe. She is now one of Obama's top foreign policy advisors. She is the one who advocated military intervention in Israel in order to stop the major human rights abuses perpetrated by Israel. She's the innovator of the responsibility to protect, which is an international security and human rights norm to to address the international community's failure to prevent and stop genocides, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. Really? What is that? In short, it's a vehicle to intervene whenever you want to, whenever it's convenient for your agenda. It was used as the basis to justify intervention in Libya. At the time, I told you that Libya was just a trial balloon for going into Israel. Power was giddy about this. Libya happened about a year ago, and we were told that we had a responsibility to protect. But also happening at the same time, which raised our radar, there was a story about a family that was massacred in Itamar by monsters. They killed a whole family, including an infant baby, stabbing the child to death. The culprits? Palestinian terrorists who were protesting Israeli settlements. Then also at the same time in West Jerusalem, Palestinian militants left a package at a busy city bus terminal, which is always heavy and has a steady stream of people. When they detonated it, it injured dozens and killed a 58-year-old British woman. It was the first bombing in Jerusalem since 2004. And just a few days before the bus bombing, Hamas claimed responsibility for firing 50 mortar shells that landed in Israeli villages. And southern Israel was rocked with a series of attacks that killed civilians and soldiers. The attacks started when gunmen opened fire with guns and rockets on an Israeli bus near the Egyptian border. I was there at the time. Then they went on to attack other vehicles. Then they had 4 suicide vests out, targeting our event last summer. It was a disturbing trend of violence. But Obama only mentioned those attacks once, if at all. So why does this administration have a pattern of giving scant attention to Palestinian human rights violations? Well, the same reason he's doing it with the Tea Party. It puts the Palestinians in the terrorist role. He can't mention those, just like he can't mention Occupy Wall Street. They don't believe those are the terrorists. They believe that it is the Tea Party and Israel and the red states, if you will, that are the criminals, the oppressors. In the case of Israel, they believe that's the oppressor state and the one committing crimes against humanity, and the Palestinian people are not. Fast forward today. Where is Samantha Power today? She's been relatively silent on all of the atrocities committed against Israel. Well, now she has become the new head of the Obama's Atrocity Prevention Board. Responsibility to protect. This is a board that the president had the nerve to announce at the Holocaust Memorial Museum on Holocaust Remembrance Day. So here's a guy who is aiding and abetting the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood and Muslim extremism. He is helping the anti-Semitism in the Middle East, but also here in the United States with Occupy Wall Street. And he's ignoring the rise in terrorist attacks against Israel and the United States through Occupy Wall Street or the Muslim Brotherhood. He's insultingly proposed the return to the 1967 borders, while he and his Secretary of State repeatedly denounced illegal Israeli settlements. He's going to now pretend that he is interested in stopping the enemies of Israel? I mean, he thinks the Israelis are the problem. Which brings me back to Cleveland. Why won't the president take out and denounce an attempted terrorist attack on our country done by an occupier? Well, for the same reason he can't take on the Palestinians. These guys are on his side. It doesn't fit their agenda. It doesn't fit his plan. You can't classify these guys or the Palestinians as terrorists, because the terrorists are the Tea Parties and the Israelis. I told you at the beginning of this uprising, when I was at Fox, I put this up on the chalkboard, that the leftists would unite against a common enemy, capitalism and the free market. Well, I remember judging from there's the chalkboard there. Did you put it up on the screen? There it is. Judging by how the media mocked me at the time, I was surprised today to find out that Reuters was somehow or another allowed to print this crazy story today. From Reuters, bring it up on the screen. Quote, first paragraph. At a meeting of Syria's opposition, Muslim Brotherhood officials gathered around Marxist colleagues, nudging them to produce policy statements for the Syrian National Council, the main political group challenging President Assad, with many living in the West, talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, and some ditching their trademark beards. It's hard to differentiate between the Brotherhood from the leftists. But there's little dispute on who's calling the shots. Isn't that interesting? Sounds familiar. Somebody really smart predicted that. I think it was Bill Kristol. So let me take you to the beginning of tonight's monologue. You know the answer. Newt Gingrich now says the Tea Party has lost its power. I hope not, because this is a critical answer. If the Tea Party is in disarray, you better pull yourself up by the bootstraps and rise up out of the ashes before the brotherhoods of the world do. And you better rise taller. See, people in Greece are looking for an answer, and I'll show you who they found it with coming up in a few minutes. Also, the same thing happened in France, and it will happen in Spain and all over the world. You have to take the small government people and the Israelis off the table. They can't be seen as providing an answer. So we must be seen. We must be visible again. If we are not seen, this country will go the way of Greece. God help us all. Our work's about to begin, gang. I told you a while back that we are going to be the key. This audience is going to change the world. I believe it with everything in me. I want you to join me for 4 days. 4 days. 4 commitments on the 4th of June on this network. You watch. I want you to gather your friends together. I want you to gather your tea parties together, your 9/12 groups. 4 nights, 4 days, 4 commitments on June 4th. We will be seen. We will be heard. We will make the difference. Underwriter this half hour is taxresolution.com. Almost half of Americans skip out on paying their taxes. So that leaves the rest of us to chip in and keep funding Washington's bloated budget. That's not going to work out well. Don't become one of those people who fall behind on their taxes and feels the IRS breathing on their neck. They'll hunt you down. Call taxresolution.com. Bob did this. He said his wife and himself couldn't thank Tax Resolution Services enough for the sheer caring professionalism in handling the crisis for them. It's ugly. The IRS will make you wait 90 minutes before they even answer the phone. That's the average hold time. And it only gets worse from there. Call 866-IRS-PROBLEMS, 866-IRS-PROBLEMS, or go online right now to taxresolution.com and let them take care of the problems for you.
Like you, I would do anything to protect my family. That's why I have food insurance, the emergency food supply that guarantees my family's most basic needs, safe and nutritious food. These high-quality freeze-dried meals last up to 25 years and are compact, affordable, and delicious. Start with a 2-week supply or plan for several months, whatever's right for you. Provide security for your family. Order food insurance today.
Freedom Connector puts the power back in your hands.
This is social organizing. It actually helps connect you with people in your own backyard.
It has no boundaries. We can link with any groups throughout the country.
We're just trying to lower barriers of connection, lower the costs of participating.
It's all about coalition building, teamwork, team building. It's a giant network.
It's in your hands. Log on to Freedom Connector today. Set up your profile, start connecting with other patriots, make your voice heard, and help take our country back.
You look so beautiful, but you're about to lose everything.
You're going to lose everything.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here.
You're going to lose your files.
There's no warning when you lose your computer files. That's why you need Carbonite Online Backup. So whatever happens, your files are safe. Try it for free at Carbonite.com.
Okay, so has anybody actually started saving for college yet?
No, not me.
No, you got time.
Oh, no, we actually started.
You have?
Really?
Sure. We figure you start saving a little now, or you'll borrow a lot later on.
Yeah, but how did you even know where to start?
Oh, I found out about the Gerber Life College Plan.
Call now for free information on the Gerber Life College Plan. It's easy.
It's pretty much worry-free.
Well, how could it be worry-free? What if something happens with the stock market?
No matter what happens, we get guaranteed safe growth.
So when she's ready for college, the money will be there.
And it doesn't take a lot of money to get started.
For as little as $10 a week, you can start saving for college and get guaranteed growth. Just call now.
Oh, it's a life insurance policy, too.
Oh, that's different.
And if she decides not to go to college, there's no penalty, so she can use the money for anything.
We've got to get started.
Yes, we do, because you're going to college.
Call 1-800-892-3073 for your free information. That's 1-800-892-3073.
Coming up on Real News, more international election news tonight, this time from Syria, where the Muslim Brotherhood waits in the wings. Buck, what do we got?
Well, Assad is not relenting at all. In fact, he's held sham elections. Violence there continues as the resistance rages on. We're going to get into whether this changes the U.S. calculation at all, the fact the UN peace plan is in tatters, and also the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, what this means for possible action there. All
right, another rigged election. Well, that's up next on Real News from the Blaze right after Glenn at 6 o'clock.
Well, I'm trying to remember who it was that said a while back that the extremes, left and right, were going to rise to prominence in Europe. I think it was Bill Kristol. I can't remember. But I looked at the news this morning and I thought, man, that Bill Kristol guy, boy, he is so right. More people should listen to him. Did I throw my box of Bill Kristols out, Tiffany?
You did.
I did?
Look, it's behind you now. They're going to show it last time you threw them all out.
Oh. Yeah. I thought I trashed them. Did we recycle them?
We don't believe in recycling here.
Good. We're in Texas. Thank you. I just wanted to check. So what has happened? France elected a socialist president for the first time in almost 30 years. But let's not kid ourselves. That story is so misleading. It's France. They're all socialist presidents. It's not on our scale. It's on the European scale. Then you also had a story this weekend. The Muslims are rising up in Syria. I'd like to add that Jordan is close behind. Military in Egypt is considering postponing the vote again. Radical Salafists are now fighting with the radical Muslim Brotherhood, and they're fighting in the streets. But I want to start here tonight. I want to start with the neo-Nazis, because believe it or not, the Nazis are back in vogue in Europe. They were the big winners in Greece. It's a party called the Golden Dawn Party. In case you don't think that they may be Nazis, here's their logo. And I don't think it's too difficult to figure out who they were aiming for here. But if that wasn't enough of a giveaway, try their first press conference, where last night the guy who's the head of the party walks in and demands the press stand up to greet him. And most of them do.
Για μια Ελλάδα χωρίς την δουλεία του μνημονίου και την εκχώρηση
της εθνικής μας κυριαρχίας, για μια Ελλάδα που δεν θα έχει καταντήσει κοινωνική ζούγκλα από τα εκατομμύρια τους λαθρομετανάστες που μας έφεραν στην πατρίδα μας χωρίς να μας ρωτήσουν. Ένα σχεδόν χρόνο κράτησε αυτή η προεκλογική εκστρατεία. Η νέα Χρυσή Αυγή του ελληνισμού ξημερώνεται. Όσοι προδίδουν αυτή την πατρίδα, ήλθε η ώρα να φοβηθούν. Ερχόμαστε. Αυτά είχα να σας πω και τίποτε άλλο.
Okay. Sounds typically Nazi. And that's probably why they should fear. He's telling people it's time to fear. And he's not telling the average person, he's telling the people that have done all of the bailouts, all of the politicians that have betrayed the country. He's telling the people who have allowed illegal immigration to happen and have all these illegal immigrants live off the system. Is any of this sounding familiar? He's telling them to fear, and it's resonating with the Greeks. Why? Because no one else is giving them an answer. They're all playing the same game. If you want to see our future, if Mitt Romney doesn't win, or if he wins and he doesn't do exactly, he plays the GOP game. If he plays the GOP game and it's business as usual and they just do all kinds of, if he doesn't do low taxes to encourage growth and chop our budget, I mean really, not take it back to 2008 levels, I mean chop it. This is what's coming in our future. And if it's not him, it'll be the communists, who, by the way, that's who took over France. It's where the world is heading. Now, what you're kind of seeing in Greece is the Bubba effect. It's people just having enough, and they don't trust the establishment. They don't trust any politician to actually do anything. So they're going to listen to somebody who says, yeah, they should be scared. Can I point out they're Nazis? If you didn't know they were a Nazi, there'd be a lot of people in this country that would say, yeah, I agree with that guy, right? How far into desperation do you have to go before you start listening to a Nazi? Greece is there. This kind of message and the communist message, which will be on the other side, the European left and right, will resonate with Americans in about 4 years, railing about the banks and how they're stealing from the people, being tired of immigrants coming in and living off and sapping the resources that they didn't pay into. But these guys are threatening physical violence. This is where we're heading if we're not careful. The time to hold things together in our country is now. In 4 years from now, maybe even in 2 years, heck, maybe by the fall, it won't be. We have to take the steps now, and that's what the episodes are about, June 4th, to get you ready in June for July and the election. We have to pray to God that Romney wins, that America can still see the difference between good and evil, right and wrong, capitalism and Marxism. But then we ought to be praying at the same time that he is who he says he is, that he is a much smaller government guy than we think he is, and that he's not in bed with the banks and the Wall Streeters. Or we'll be repeating what soon will be Greece's history. Greece is seeing a surge of the fringe parties. We already know about the Nazi Golden Dawn Party, which picked up about 21 seats. We heard, one of the newest elected officials ranting about being anti-bank, anti-immigration. But then there's the KKE Party, who's communist. They won about 26 seats. They're the Marxist-Leninist mindset. When it was founded, the KKE pushed for the formation of trade unions, shorter work days, and higher wages. It's the equivalent of the SEIU if it had a party. But that's not all that's happening in Greece. You have the New Democracy Party, which picked up most seats with 108. It was against the first EU IMF bailout. It was against the austerity cuts. This party's members believe that a good work ethic leads to success in business, and not everyone should automatically have the same success opportunities. It sounds more like a free market capitalist party to me. Syriza AK, the radical left coalition, won 52 seats. The party formally launched in 2004 when a bunch of the leftist parties and groups joined together. That sounds like what Barack Obama is doing. The issues they have in common are that they're anti-social security. They oppose new anti-terror laws. Thanks to this weekend's election, they quadrupled the number of seats they hold in parliament. PASOK got 41 seats. That's a member of the Socialist International Movement. I mean, all of these really, except for the one, all of these could be one party. This is a party that was founded on high wages, high capital gains taxes, criticism of NATO, and the need for bigger government. 26 years ago, when the party held a majority, it amended the Constitution to expand the Prime Minister's powers. That's, I guess, the party of President Barack Obama. Is it a coincidence that the economic conditions today in Greece surrounding the election of the new Nazi party are almost the same as when Hitler gained office in Germany? When Hitler was elected, unemployment was at 30%. Look at this graph. Today, in Greece, it's 22%. It is the oldest story in Europe, and it's happening almost exactly the same way. Look at the Nazi votes. Remember, it only took 30% to elect Hitler to lead Germany in 1932. History repeats itself, especially and positively if we don't know history. Oh, everybody knows who Hitler is. No, they don't. Believe it or not, my wife and I watched a documentary this weekend called 180. It starts with, do you know who Adolf Hitler is? Watch this.
Adolf Hitler, what do you know about him?
He was what's it called? But he was kind of a president.
What do you know about Adolf Hitler?
I really don't know anything about it.
Have you heard of Adolf Hitler?
No.
Never heard of him?
No.
I vaguely remember him.
Who was Adolf Hitler?
He was the guy was he German?
You know, it gets worse from there. This goes back to where I was last year. This is what made me nervous last week when I sat down and spoke with the Dutch politician, Geert Wilders. He says a lot of things that people find appealing when they're under attack, and some of it I agree with. Other pieces of it I don't. But he's not the extremist. The extremist follows Geert. The extremist says he hasn't gone far enough. We're under attack, the whole world is. Congress can't balance the budget. They can't even pass a budget. We're $15 trillion in debt. We haven't had a budget in our Congress in, what, 2 years? We know the Muslim Brotherhood now has operatives in this administration. Our borders are a mess. We've got drug dealers and terrorists coming across. There were 15 people that were beheaded and 9 hung just within a mile of our own border just this last weekend. The rest of the world is in the same kind of shape. France has elected a socialist. By the way, the socialist was instantly invited to the White House to meet with Barack Obama. He said he couldn't wait to start working together on shared economic goals. Oh, I bet. Just FYI, the new French president declared the #1 enemy of France was finance, and he wants to tax the wealthy 75%. That sounds about right for Barack Obama. And the reports are that large corporations and wealthy people in France are already planning on leaving. But where are they going to go? And what happens when all the wealth producers leave and they have no wealth to spread? It's the road to serfdom. You keep going down this road, and we all know what's going to happen. It's going to come crashing down. Look at this news headline. See this? French and Greek elections have overthrown Merkel as the dominant force. Remember, France owes Germany $161 billion. If France follows Greece, which owes Germany $21 billion, Germany is in trouble because they were forced to put all the money in this system. And what happens to Germany if these guys default and don't pay them? Will they get hacked off? Don't mess with the Germans. They're the ones who started the Nazi thing. No one in Europe understands small government and low taxes. I have been asked by prime ministers, members of parliament, politicians in several countries in Europe to help them figure out, start a tea party. I've always said no. First of all, it doesn't come from a government official. And I haven't wanted to get involved because Europeans scare the daylights out of me. When they hit trouble, they turn to massive government. And the only kind of government that kills people are massive governments. Instead, this summer we decided to offer something else to the citizens of Europe and people from around the world. We need to come together. In Dallas this summer, we're having the first ever historic Global Tea Party Summit. FreedomWorks announced this on Friday, that it will be hosting a global summit at the American Airlines Arena. People in Europe and all over the world are begging for help. They need help. May I suggest we help them, teach them the principles while we restore them in our own life, restore freedom and sanity to its rightful place on planet Earth. This is something that has never happened on a planetary scale before. Find out all about this historic kickoff the week of July 28th. Go to mercury1.org and we'll follow them. We'll follow Europe as long as they don't go off a cliff, and then we will pull them from the brink of the cliff. If we remain invisible while the Marxists continue to rule the roost, we'll go right over the cliff. So will the rest of the world. It's time for Americans to lead again and show America the way out.
In 2000, the U.S. national debt was $5.6 trillion, and gold was $272 an ounce. By 2010, the U.S. debt was $13.5 trillion. Gold had risen to $1,421. Today, our government is projecting over $20 trillion of debt in the year 2016. Isn't it time? You own gold? You can't control federal spending, but you can control where you put your investment dollars. Goldline has safely delivered billions of dollars in gold to its clients for over 50 years. Diversifying with gold is a smart strategy, and it's easy to get started. Call Goldline and get your free investor kit. Be sure to ask about our price guarantee program. Use your credit card for safety and convenience, and enjoy free shipping. Call Goldline now and buy gold with confidence. Get started today with Goldline.
The TRS Files, True Tax Resolution Stories.
Hello, I'm Gary, and I'm not a paid actor. I went from owing $43,000 to the Internal Revenue Service to paying them $1,000.
If you owe the IRS over $20,000 or more in back taxes, have unfiled returns, or are under audit, call Tax Resolution Services now, 888-7804-TAX, or visit taxresolution.com/GBTV.
Tatler Reusable Canning Lids. Family owned since 1976. That's right, Tatler Reusable Canning Lids. Yes, reusable, with a lifetime guarantee. Made in America, BPA free. Tatler Reusable Canning Lids, because those who can, do. Get rid of the disposable lid. Go to reusablecannинglids.com. Tatler Reusable Canning Lids.
Freedom Connector puts the power back in your hands.
This is social organizing. It actually helps connect you with people in your own backyard.
It has no boundaries. We can link with any groups throughout the country.
We're just trying to lower barriers of connection, lower the costs of participating.
It's all about coalition building, teamwork, team building. It's a giant network.
It's in your hands. Log on to Freedom Connector today. Set up your profile, start connecting with other patriots, make your voice heard, and help take our country back.
For the special interests coming in from Washington, they recognize they need to send a message. They need to not only beat me, they need to take me out and send a message to anyone in America that if you cross these special interests, they're coming for you next. If we fail to win this election, if we fail to win this battle, this will set aside any sort of courageous act in American politics, at least a decade, if not a generation.
I don't think we have a generation. That's Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker talking about the state's recall efforts and how it's a fight that has enormous repercussions and goes way beyond Wisconsin's border. That clip is from Ami Horowitz's latest documentary. This guy is really a great filmmaker. It's called Showdown Wisconsin. It premieres tomorrow night on The Real News, immediately following this program tomorrow night. Ami joins us now from our Mercury GBTV studios in New York City. How are you, sir?
I'm great, buddy. How you doing? You know, I kind of miss you being in New York here. I can't grab you, give you a big hug.
You know, there is a place called Texas. You hop a plane and just come on down anytime.
Isn't that part of Mexico?
No, not yet. Tell me about what Governor Walker was talking about there, that he was, he's saying this is so far beyond. How would this recall movement set governors back at least a decade, if not a generation?
Well, I think everybody involved really understands, you know, what the stakes are here, and the stakes are absolutely massive. You've got a guy, Scott Walker, who took a massive risk, right? He's going after what, you know, I would say the crack cocaine of government spending, which are entitlements. And when you give somebody something, they're very, very difficult to take away. So, you know, essentially he's, you know, putting himself in the chopping block and saying, we're gonna take this massive risk. I want you to take this risk with me. And everybody's mobilized against him. And I think that if he's recalled, it's going to send a massive, massive chill throughout the country. Mayors and governors, who's going to want to take the risk if they see the reward for that is losing your job?
Okay, well, because it's the right thing to do. Is he is he prepared to lose? I mean, he doesn't want to, but I mean, he's the kind of guy who's like, he's going down swinging.
Yeah, listen, he's a very smart guy, and he can read the polls like everybody else. This thing is neck and neck. In fact,
49-49, isn't it?
Well, there's a Marquette poll that came out recently that was 49-48 on registered voters and 48-49 on unregistered voters. I think the unregistered one was in the advantage of Walker, and the registered one was in the advantage of the whoever's going to be you know, trying to take him out.
This is the reason why how much are they spending? $100 million?
It's going to be they've spent about $50 million thus far, and they expect about $100 million in total.
And that's labor unions?
No, it's pretty evenly, I think, evenly split. Maybe there might be a spending advantage toward Walker. There's a lot of money from both sides.
Okay. This is what he did. Before, the government workers paid $0 for health care. Now how much do they have to pay?
I think it's 12.5%. Not a massive amount.
But I mean, it's a huge. I mean, that's a huge, you know, nut to crack if that's coming out of your paycheck. Somebody comes to you and says, "I'm going to take an extra 12% out." That's.
Listen, in this environment, everything counts. But
I know,
you know, no question about it.
They now contribute under 6% of their salary to their pension plan. And what did he do on collective bargaining?
So collective bargaining, there's a whole bunch of aspects behind it. I think the single biggest issue with collective bargaining was the fact that he decided to make being part of a union optional. So you can essentially opt out of paying your dues to the union. And I think the unions see that essentially as an existential threat to their livelihood.
Okay.
Then we're talking about public unions.
I'm guessing that they could have done everything else and they would have been pretty okay with it. But once he crossed that was the thin blue line, if you will. Would you?
You're absolutely right.
Okay. So it happens on June 5th. What has happened since he's done this to the economy and to the state?
You know, when he came into office, this was a state that was losing jobs left and right. It was a state that had a $4 billion budget deficit for a very small state, a not insignificant, amount of money. And he's essentially turned, I would say, the fiscal ship around almost completely. You've now have a budget surplus instead of a deficit. The first half of the year, the first year he was in office, he gained jobs instead of losing jobs. And right now, they stand about 15 or 20% below national unemployment. Their unemployment number is under 7%.
Is that,
we're sitting at 8.1%.
Is that unusual for Wisconsin, being such a progressive state?
It's a pretty progressive state, but you mean in terms of outperforming the rest of the country?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But I'd also add, something else he's done is really changed the entire business environment of Wisconsin. Wisconsin really it wasn't just about, they were shedding jobs in large measure because it was a very difficult state for companies to do business in with the previous government. And what he's done is he's basically, opened up the welcome mat for businesses to move back to Wisconsin, which is what they did that first year. Now, unfortunately, in 2012, this political overhang, whether or not he's going to come back into office has really been a problem for bringing Wisconsin, more businesses into the door because they're not sure what's going to happen with that election.
What's the most shocking thing that you found or shot when you were up there?
The people in Madison, Wisconsin are nonplussed when somebody walks up to them half naked and asks them questions.
Is there a reason why you had to be half naked when you ask questions?
I don't know. I got to entertain you, Glenn.
Yeah, okay.
I do this for you.
All right. Let me show one clip here. This is you at the state capitol, and they loved what you said, but you weren't serious. Watch.
Europe is a dirty word now, right? We shouldn't be like Europe. Europe is a place where, people have jobs for life. People have health care. People have fat pensions. They have vacations. They wear Speedos. I like Speedos. Why can't we be more like Europe? Why is that a dirty word? What's wrong with what's going on in Europe? And they say to us, no, we should be nothing like them. And I say, we should be more like them. That's what we need to be. That should be our model. So I say, Europe, 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 Europe.
Okay. I can't take. I don't know how people live in Madison, Wisconsin.
A lot of them have, they wear a lot of beards and they drink a lot of beer.
Right. Well, you'd have to. Why should anybody in the rest of the country care about this?
For a lot of reasons. First of all, if you're living in a state, I think a perfect example of where Wisconsin is at relative to other parts of the country is their neighbor, Illinois. Illinois had very similar problems to Wisconsin. Massive budget deficit, shedding jobs. And here's a tale of two states, where on the one hand, you have a state that decided, and this is Illinois, that decided that to get out of this crisis, we're going to raise taxes. We're going to make it more difficult for businesses. And in the case of Wisconsin, you had Scott Walker took the opposite approach. Cut taxes, cut entitlements, make it a more business-friendly environment. And you see Illinois is gotten worse and worse and worse, and Wisconsin has emerged from this fiscal morass. I think the takeaway here is states cannot continue going on. Like our federal deficit, the states cannot continue down this road of fiscal responsibility. It will destroy you. And I'm afraid that if Walker loses, we're going to move back toward the path of Europe, like these crazies in the State House want us to do.
Can you tell me what is the role of the Tea Party? Are you seeing the Tea Party out in Wisconsin? Are they involved in this?
Absolutely. I think the Tea Party understands that this is an important race, and they've been very aggressive in trying to support Walker, both fiscally in trying to funnel money towards his campaign, as well as bodies on the ground. I think they've been very active in trying to make sure that he's reelected. They're
saying that Newt Gingrich and the press is saying that the Tea Party is kind of passé, it's past, it's gone. I get the sense that they're more strategic, and they know that it's a waste of time to go march in Washington. What's happening in Indiana?
I think that what the Tea Party has done is essentially what you said. They're no longer. It's not all, now. No, it's no longer about a bunch of people getting together, in parks and on the mall, and holding signs and trying to vent their frustration. They are trying to be more strategic about it. They are, in fact, trying to harness that energy specifically into grassroots campaigns, going door to door, mailings, email blasts, and I think Indiana is an example of I think why people of the old guard Republicans have to fear this new Tea Party, incarnation. And they've put up, Dick Lugar has been in the Senate there for, I don't know, 75, 80 years. And they've got a guy now, Murdoch, no relation to the great Rupert. And he's got this guy running for his money. I think it's amazing what they have done with a guy like Lugar.
Well, we find out tomorrow, do we not?
We do.
Yeah, whether it works or not. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow night on The Real News.
Looking forward to it, buddy.
Thank you. And you know what? Let me leave with one thing that Governor Walker said to Ami about his role and what's happening right now. Watch this clip.
Do you feel like at times that you're the canary in the coal mine?
There's no doubt about it.
Well, you know the canary oftentimes dies.
It's tomorrow night.
Do you find this recall to essentially be a political hit on you?
Sure, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this is all about punishing me, taking me out to send a clear message that if you dare to take on the entrenched special interest, they'll come and get you.
And the reason why the national unions are playing in Wisconsin is to send a message: don't take us on.
These reforms reduced the political influence of public employee unions. That reduction in influence is, I think, what has caused much of the sort of the chaos.
If we fail to win this election, if we fail to win this battle, this will set aside any sort of courageous act in American politics, at least a decade, if not a generation.
The left is building a massive propaganda machine for the 2012 elections. We have already seen them hitting into the streets, spread their radical message of government growth, increased spending, more debt. We cannot allow them to out-organize us. That's why FreedomWorks is using freedomconnector.com to organize the grassroots level. It's an online networking tool that puts you in touch with like-minded individuals. It's crucial that we know each other. You can log on to create events, gather petition signatures, and send messages to Congress. You can share this information, and I urge you to do it. Share it with your friends. Again, go to freedomconnector.com. Create your free account and begin connecting with your conservative neighbors and friends, not only here, but all across the country. And soon much more. Freedom Connector. Do it now. freedomconnector.com.
Bringing a firearm into your home is one of the most important decisions you can make. If you are considering gun ownership, cheaperthandirt.com is here to help you make a responsible and informed choice. We understand it is a personal decision how you choose to protect your family. We offer thousands of choices of firearms, ammunition, and accessories to suit your individual needs. Be responsible, be proactive, and exercise your Second Amendment right. Find us online at cheaperthandirt.com. That's cheaperthandirt.com.
Freedom Connector puts the power back in your hands.
This is social organizing. It actually helps connect you with people in your own backyard.
It has no boundaries. We can link with any groups throughout the country.
We're just trying to lower barriers of connection, lower the costs of participating.
It's all about coalition building, teamwork, team building. It's a giant network.
It's in your hands. Log on to Freedom Connector today. Set up your profile, start connecting with other patriots. Make your voice heard and help take our country back.
Are you a homeowner 62 or older? Are you looking to access cash from your home or eliminate your monthly mortgage payment? How about both? Then call the number on your screen. With a reverse mortgage, there are no monthly mortgage payments. You will still own your home, and you will have many options on how to receive your cash. Call now. It's time to get all the facts, and Reverse Mortgage Solutions is here to help.
Call 855-200-1039. That's 855-200-1039.
Stop switching back and forth between drill bits and driver heads. Bo Ryle's here for the halftime drill driver, the innovative new way to drill, flip, and drive in only 5 seconds. You'll never have to change a bit in the middle of a job again. And you can go from drilling to driving, Phillips to flat, any combination for any task. The breakthrough, our patent-pending swivel head that flips and locks, giving you precision performance from drilling to driving in seconds. You get the halftime drill driver for only $19.95. I'll even include 4 Phillips heads, 4 flat, and 4 drill bits, no charge. Call now and receive this durable carry case free. Call or click right this minute and get a second complete set free. Just pay separate processing and handling. You get it all for the low, low price of just $19.95.
To order halftime drill driver for $19.95 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-651-0874 or log on to gethalftime.com.
Coming this year from Mercury Inc., President Obama calls his childhood mentor Frank, but he was so much more. A writer, an entrepreneur, an activist, and a full-fledged communist. Author Paul Kanger reveals the untold story of the communist who changed America forever. Then, a publishing first, a 10-part ebook thriller series released over the course of 1 year, Fury and Light, from New York Times bestselling author Chris Stewart. By June, the battle will be raging, not for the Oval Office, but for our souls. It's time to find a new way forward. The Ultimate Voter's Guide from Glenn Beck. In the fall, we turn to entertainment with 2 groundbreaking sequels. First, the young adult thriller Michael Vey, Rise of the Elgin. And then, the long-awaited sequel to Glenn's smash hit novel, The Overton Window, finally arrives. It's a year of education, entertainment, enlightenment, and of course, the election. All coming this year from Glenn Beck and Mercury Inc.
I have to tell you, we have some great stuff coming for you this year from Mercury Inc. In 2004, I was having dinner with a friend across the street from the White House, and we looked at these windows from the other side. And I remember saying to my friend, it was 2004, so it was right at the Gulf or the Iraqi War, and I said, how many people are running for office who make these earth-shattering decisions, make them like this in this office? I can't imagine sitting behind this desk and not spending most of my time on my knees. Things are really crazy. About 2 years ago, I went on vacation and I read a series of 6 books. My wife yelled at me, "Stop reading them, you're on them." I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't put this series down. I purchased the series, and Mercury Inc. is now going to publish tomorrow a new ebook series. It says it was Light and Fury, but we've changed the name. I think that was like the 4th iteration of the name. We've changed it to Wrath and Righteousness. And it is by Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart, when I've told you before that Chris is a friend of mine and I don't want him to go serve in Washington because I want him to work for me, you'll know now why. He's one of the best writers I've ever read. He helped with the George Washington book, and he's a historian, and a storyteller, and an intel guy. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's also running for Congress. We've had him on the program before. He'll be with us later this week to talk about Wrath and Righteousness, but this is something that nobody's ever tried to do before. It is not going to be sold in stores. It's only going to be sold in an ebook fashion. And I'll tell you the reason why we've done that is twofold. One, the book world is dying. It's hard to get people to read books. We want to see if we could break this up into, instead of 6 books over 6 years, we've taken it and we've cut it into 10 episodes. And they're pretty nonstop. By the time you get to book 3 or the 3rd month, you will be absolutely addicted. It is like, it's the e-reader of 24. It's an amazing thriller. about the battle between light and darkness, and you will, I'm telling you, won't be able to see the difference between today and what is the what the book is. By the way, this will be out tomorrow, and it is free for subscribers. Order it now. It's free. Go to glennbeck.com. It's available, ebooks tomorrow. Do it now, though. From Dallas, good night, America.
Breaking news tonight. We've got real news. This just in. Real news from the Blaze.
Welcome, everybody, to Real News from the Blaze. Happy Monday. Well, despite the continued violence in Syria, Syria is holding parliamentary elections today. Observers note that all participating parties have been sanctioned by the Assad regime. David Webb of Sirius XM Radio joins us at the table. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Welcome back. But, Buck, first we want to turn to you to lay out what's been happening in Syria. And I wanted to read to you a quote that I came across from a quote, younger generation of the Muslim Brotherhood, who we're learning is more and more involved. He says that, quote, we are a party that presents moderate solutions. We are not extremists, neither to the left nor to the right. Are they to be believed, and what do these elections really reflect?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood is one factor among several right now that I think are really influencing U.S. opinion on what we should be doing here. First off, you have sort of the actions of Assad, so we can deal with that. And what you've seen is basically a dual-track strategy. On the one hand, there's sort of these sham elections. There's talk about the 3-month-old new constitution, these sort of overt acts that are meant to sort of pretend that Assad is the reformer that he said he was some years ago. Of course, the Syrian people aren't buying it, but he's doing that. It's sort of an act of political theater. On the other hand, of course, you have the repression, you have the violence, you have the continued clearing out of different areas, and it's sort of more patchwork than it once was. But that may be because that the insurgents in some areas have been defeated or at least suppressed temporarily. So he may not need to be as active with his military and intelligence apparatus in some parts of Syria. Of course, all this is going on in the midst of what is supposed to be a UN peace plan, which I think now is universally considered a failed enterprise. Everyone at this table, I believe, thought it was going to fail from the onset. Of the 6 points in the plan, I don't think he has adhered to a single one. And so we have a better sense, for those who were unsure anyway, you have a better sense of what you're dealing with, which is essentially a sociopathic crime family in charge of a country that they will not relinquish power of, and is willing to do absolutely anything in order to keep that power. So then you look at the resistance. The resistance right now is undermanned in terms of trained fighters, does not have the weapons it says it needs in order to defeat the Syrian army, and Syria could also be thought of as sort of the way that Prussia was. It's really an army with a country. I mean, it's a vast military and security apparatus in a pretty small country population-wise. They can't defeat Assad with what they have right now. They've been pretty clear on that. But the Muslim Brotherhood is a major part of this resistance, and the resistance is at least maturing politically. There's a lot of discussion around the world as to what will happen now. The Friends of Syria have been meeting. Violence, of course, we could pull up a chart to show what the latest casualty figures are. But the violence is continuing, of course, and you can kind of get a sense there of what the numbers are throughout the country. Right now, estimates are from the resistance about 13,000 dead, still well below the estimates of the one Hama massacre that Assad's father had perpetrated in the 80s. But anyway, so we have these factors coming together now. We essentially have a failed UN peace plan. We have the emergence of the Muslim Brotherhood, which we knew was there, but it's becoming more clear that they are a sort of a cohesive element within this broader insurgency. And you also have simultaneously ongoing violence, hopelessness, and despair. So given those things all packaged and put together, has anyone at this table, do we have a sense as to whether positions on this issue are shifting? Do people think we should be more involved? Should the U.S. have we changed our opinions is basically where I'm going, given what's happened to date? Anyway.
I don't see that there has been any change of position from the highest levels of power to perhaps even at this table. The status quo seems to be the status quo. It's where we were, what, a month ago, 6 months ago, 1 year ago? The only things that have changed is violence has gone on, the death toll has risen, and it's becoming more and more clear who the opposition is, none of which gives us any clarity on what the right course of action is.
I would offer that, for example, I've held that we should remain as uninvolved as we possibly can, particularly at the expense of boots on the ground. SE has said, for example, that a more direct intervention, because human lives are not just at stake or being lost here, would be warranted. I do think it's worth pointing out that this administration has somehow managed to take neither honest position and essentially say that we will not, I believe actually Hillary Clinton said, we will not stand idly by, we will not allow this to happen, and we are allowing this to happen and standing idly by.
Right.
So I think, you know, the administration should either make the principled case for why we can work through other countries, we can try to take a hands-off approach to what is obviously becoming a full-scale civil war, or that we are going a whole hog on this. We're actually going to get really involved. We're going to do aerial strikes. We're going to have a no-fly zone. We're going to work through Turkey in order to set up refugee camps and protect them, give them our aegis of protection. Those are the two positions I think you can hold on this issue, and the Obama administration has managed to take neither.
But let me ask you, David, because perhaps is there a third way? I was reading that the Turkish Prime Minister was telling Syrian refugees in his country, and you know, certainly for his own, you know, his own agenda, but that he said they're very close to defeating Assad. Is there a way that perhaps we could be encouraging Turkey, for example, to be showing leadership in trying to resolve the Syria crisis?
The reality is Turkey is not in a position to do much. When you look at how they operate, their interaction in the Middle East, their dependence on Israel when it comes to trade. They trade about $2 billion a year in basic equities and goods. They're not in a position. The reality in Syria is there's nothing we can do. We can't have direct intervention. They have a massive air defense system. They are essentially an army with a country. Very good analogy with Prussia. And when you go in, what do you do? The other actor in this is the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is not like Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. You don't get to knock on the door and join. They're very smart. They recruit. They operate in one area a certain way, in another area another. And they are operating to build their infrastructure. This is going to be bloody. It's going to play out, unfortunately, without the world and the UN. The UN's the biggest joke in this. I mean, I stood on Mount Hermon, the second highest point in the Middle East, looked at the UN outpost. It's not even manned in the winter. They're an ineffective organization. Their effective, strong action is, we'll type it in bold.
I would just say that one thing to add to that is that, in fact, people who are supporters of UN action there are basically saying at this point that UN action has been so ineffective it may spur international community action, maybe through NATO. Therefore, it's kind of effective, if you will. And that's actually the level the argument.
Unintended consequence is good.
The UN is so unable to affect the outcome there in a way that is, you know, going to assist with human rights and protection of innocent civilians, that maybe now it'll also shame Russia and China into finally falling in line. I think shaming Russia and China is much harder than some of the people in the UN.
That will be as effective as shaming the UN. Let's face it, Russia's the big actor in the Middle East that nobody talks about, especially when it comes to Iran, with supplying them with materials that they need. And China just wants the resources. Russia has an advantage that Middle East that's unstable is a boiling pot, a simmering pot, if you will, when it comes to Europe and when it comes to the United States, much in the way if you think of a North Korea, where China keeps North Korea as the simmering pot for us to stay focused on.
Well, I have two questions, I guess, to the table. One, I mean, Buck, I think you're right that our administration has rhetorically not taken sides or taken both sides, but isn't that effectively not doing anything? That is a decision not to get involved. So that's really a decision to do what you've suggested, which is nothing. Is that right?
No. What the administration has said is that they will absolutely do everything necessary, use all means at their disposal not to allow this to happen.
But they're not doing anything, and it has happened.
They're doing things.
It is happening right now.
They're just ineffectual. I would say that you could argue that this is actually not a problem that the U.S. is going to or should try to solve, which is very different than what the administration has said.
I know that's your position.
Right.
And I think rhetorically the administration is saying in public something else. But in reality, they're really doing exactly what you want, which is nothing.
Which begs the question, is that not a pretty ingenious, then, strategy? Because you cannot go out publicly and diplomatically and say, we will do nothing in Syria. We have no winner in this fight. We want to take no position. We hope there are multiple losers. We just can't do that diplomatically. So I think your point's well taken, Essie. Is the Obama administration not doing exactly what those of us would say? And I find myself aligned with you, Buck. I don't see a good side in this
fight. The problem is they're not doing nothing. They're just not doing things that are effective. And I've also said that I just think that we should draw the line at U.S. military involvement. There are a lot of things you can do. I don't know all the things the administration is, in fact, doing right now. That's for one. in terms of the diplomacy behind the scenes, how they're discussing things with Turkey and other regional actors. But yes, I mean, they've effectively said that they've said they're willing to use, that military force is not completely off the table. That has been raised as an issue. I'm saying I don't think that should be.
But I still have the question, though, is if the United States can be using leverage with other actors in the Middle East, perhaps not with, Russia or China as like, our big sort of powerful rivalries, but what about the rest of the Middle East? A lot of people say, why can't the Middle East take care of itself?
Well, here's the problem. Who are the actors in the Middle East? You've got a proxy with Iran when you're dealing with Syria. You've got no effective person or government in the Middle East that can influence Syria. Who would influence the Saudis? They can't do anything. The rest of the Middle East is basically ineffectual, and Israelis certainly are going to stay out of this one. They've got enough issues on the other side with Egypt and Gaza.
Could Turkey be supporting the Syrian rebels with food, shelter, clothing, or weapons?
Turkey is going to be pulled into this thing whether they want to or not, just because of their geographic position. Yeah, proximity. There's absolutely
being fired on.
there's no way around that, and there are refugees that are spilling across the border. There's also the argument that is being made now that Syria is effectively already a one-sided proxy fight. You have Russia and you have Iran through Hezbollah working in Syria to subvert the Syrian resistance. So, I mean, I know there are people who say that that should be done on the other side. The question is, you can arm and equip rebels, for example, without putting a U.S. soldier in jeopardy or actually flying planes over Syrian airspace. There are things you can do that stop well short of that I think I would be comfortable with if I was making these decisions, which sadly I am not. But this administration seems to want to absolutely have it both ways, saying maybe military, absolutely not military. We'll do this, we won't do that. Let's let the UN issue play out. But
right, which is doing nothing, which is effectively doing nothing.
Effectively, what we have is an impossible situation. This is the ultimate standoff. Neither one is effective, draws us into a conflict. If we supply the rebels, then what do we do with that on the international stage?
There's the Muslim Brotherhood.
Trying to keep our finger on the pulse.
We haven't really gotten into.
No, but that's what I want. That was the last question I wanted to ask. I'm sorry. It seems to me, and I don't want to be a hypochondriac about this, but it seems to me the Muslim Brotherhood is popping up here and there as this Arab Spring erupts, really exporting government around the world,
well,
right?
It's always been, they've been there for a long time, but now you're seeing them
exactly come into leadership roles and taking over these failed regimes, sort of displacing chaos with ostensibly
they're political operatives,
leadership,
and they're very good at planting governments. That's probably the best way to
Are
do
we
it.
going to see more of this?
Yes. You absolutely will.
Very possibly. I don't think anybody would look at the numbers right now and look at just the way the political opposition is coalescing and suggest that the Muslim Brotherhood, if there were free and fair elections in Syria, would not look something along the lines of what we have seen in Egypt, which then again raises the question, the do a lot, do a little, or do absolutely nothing. I think that if you do a lot, you're certainly going to see the Muslim Brotherhood rise to power. If you try to wait and see what the best options are for you as this plays out, maybe you can actually affect the outcome.
13,000 more dead. We'll just see. We'll just let it play out.
We'll see if there's a Goldilocks solution to all of this. Well, more election news when we come back. France elects a socialist for the first time in 20 years. What it means for you is up next.
Food independence, emergency preparedness, self-reliance. MyPatriotSupply.com. Get our survival seed vault and feed your family from your own garden for just $37.95. Our non-hybrid heirloom seeds are genuinely American, just like you. Your survival needs and survival seeds are at MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com. Self-reliance. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Freedom Connector puts the power back in your hands.
This is social organizing. It actually helps connect you with people in your own backyard.
It has no boundaries. We can link with any groups throughout the country.
We're just trying to lower barriers of connection, lower the costs of participating.
It's all about coalition building, teamwork, team building. It's a giant network.
It's in your hands. Log on to Freedom Connector today. Set up your profile, start connecting with other patriots, make your voice heard, and help take our country back.
When it's warm, you'd love to open every door and let fresh air into your home. The trouble is, you'd end up letting lots of bugs into your home as well. Now there's Magic Mesh, the new type of screen door that opens easily and then magically closes itself behind you. The secret isn't really magic, it's magnets. 18 magnets to be exact. When you separate them, they automatically snap back together. That makes it great for pets too, because instead of scratching and whining, they can come and go as they please. So let the fresh air in and keep those annoying bugs out with Magic Mesh, a $40 value, yours for just $19.95. But wait, call right now and we'll double the offer. Just pay separate processing and handling. You get 2 Magic Mesh curtains for just $19.95. Don't delay. Call and order yours today.
To order Magic Mesh for $19.95 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-572-9265 or log on to buymagicmesh.com.
Well, if you're a Roniac or Paulista, it was a good weekend as the congressman took 2 big victories in the Maine and Nevada state conventions. While the chances of Ron Paul winning the GOP nomination are nearly non-existent, these small victories, however, could have big consequences in Tampa this coming August. SC, we're talking about the Republican convention in August, and Ron Paul seems to be leveraging possibly a bigger position there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, here's what happened this weekend, in case you weren't watching what Ron Paul was up to. He actually won pretty big in Maine and Nevada. He captured the plurality of the delegates. In Nevada, he took 22 of 25. In Maine, he won 18 of 24. Good news, but still no closer for Ron Paul to the nomination. He's not going to win, but there is an opportunity for him to embarrass the party, and that's what people are worried about. It would come at the worst time if Ron Paul has a big moment in Tampa when Mitt Romney is trying to sort of make the argument that we finally all coalesced around him. So what could actually happen? Well, Ron Paul supporters who are bound to vote for Romney in the first round by state rules could abstain at the convention from casting their ballots. That would keep Romney under the 1144 that he needs to win the nomination, although he's still going to win the nomination. I cannot say that more times. He is going to win the nomination. But I have a couple of questions for the table about what this means in terms of larger implications. One, what does everyone think Ron Paul's intentions are here? Do you think he actually wants to win the presidency? That's A. B, do you think he's trying to just influence Romney and pull him farther to the right or farther libertarian? Or, as some have guessed, maybe this is all an elaborate setup, sort of a dress rehearsal to put Rand Paul in a better position for a 2016 run. What do you think is going on here?
Can I offer a fourth before we
yes?
Number 3?
Did I not get one?
I think there are some that are suggesting, some cynical observers suggest that this is a career move for Ron Paul and always has been.
He's 300 years old.
But that
what
always
is the career
been.
Move?
He maintains relevancy. He sells newsletters.
Out of his garage.
A lot.
All right, okay.
And he remains a national figure.
I think he believes more in what he's doing. I don't think,
I'm just telling you one of the things people say.
Okay. Just supposed to be clear on that.
Right, all right, so what do we think he's trying to do here?
Yeah, over and over, that he really wants to influence the political discussion, the debate.
Well, he is influencing, right? So he's successful in that regard. Sorry.
True believers here?
But here's what Ron Paul has done for 26 years. He's been ineffective. The reality is, as an elected legislature, you can have your principles, you can have your votes, but if only one bill out of 600 with your name on it have gone anywhere, you have been ineffective. You're right on the legacy play. It's a legacy play for Rand Paul. Look at how Rand won his victory. It was the Ron Paul machine basically brought over to give Rand his win. And he does want relevance. He wants a speaking position. That's what I believe at the convention.
Right.
But if he gets that speaking position, and the party's got to think in terms of the general election, you've got to let him speak at some point, but edit and make sure he stays on message.
And to
because
be clear,
he's off the reservation on foreign policy. He's not in reality because he requires, by his belief, that other countries act the way he believes. And when in the course of human history has that ever happened?
Buck, what do you think? What are his intentions here?
I agree with what was just said. I'm trying to think of some way to piggyback off it or be additive. But Look, I would just say this. I think that he recognizes that right now there is a real discussion around those who support Romney, which there are a few of them at this table who at different times have at least noted their inclination to think that Romney is the best candidate. And look, I would say this. I think that in the long run, this is probably a good thing for the Republican Party. I would say that for a candidate who is often called a flip-flopper, who is often, his conservative credentials are brought into doubt, having Ron Paul along to make sure that that voice is still heard and that Romney will do what he says he is going to do, which is be a fiscal conservative who is willing to tackle entitlements, cut deficits, et cetera, I think that there's a place for that. And I do not buy, I categorically do not buy this notion that he's going to just sort of try to muck things up at the convention
but nobody thinks he's actually trying to become president.
But his supporters might muck it up by acting on their own.
I got to give my answer because I just gave the cynical one for others.
Okay, tell me, and
then
we have to move on to questions.
So let me give my legit answer. I do think there is some cynical relevancy here. I think he wants to maintain a position that is somewhat self-serving. I think being on the national stage is attractive and is addictive, and I do think he wants to remain in that position. That being said, I do think he has principles, and he wants to make those principles part of the Republican Party, and he wants to influence the Republican Party, and I think it brings up an interesting debate, as we had Gary Johnson sit at this table, who just received the Libertarian nomination for president, to say which one of these two men, Ron Paul inside the Republican Party or Gary Johnson outside, is influencing Libertarian ideas more.
But I have a question about that. When I was reading this, why does Ron Paul get a pass on subverting basically the democratic popular will of the Republican Party?
We're going to get to this.
By going to these
We are going to get to this. Hold
on, Essie. I want to know why he doesn't get the same kind of criticism as your gal pal.
It's in my questions. It's in my questions. We are going to get to that. Because it really is fascinating to look at the personality disorder behind these the impulse to keep running and running and running. But before we get to that, I do want to ask what this does to the establishment, right? The establishment GOP has had to survive with the advent of these splinter groups, libertarians being the largest among them. The Tea Party. Recent statistics we found, Cato says in 2008, 23% of Americans identified as libertarian. In 2012, 41% of Americans self-identified as supporting the Tea Party. Where do those voters go if not to Republicans who have courted these votes? How does the GOP act like a big tent and maintain ties to Ron Paul libertarians and Tea Partiers without embracing some of the more radical elements of Ron Paul's foreign policy and his fandom?
Well, you know, you start with an age differential. When you look at the Tea Party and you look at the Ron Paul group, if you will, where he gets a lot of young support, he gets a lot of disaffected Democrats, a lot of disaffected people who are young. When you look at the older voter and the way people typically vote, voting habits that have been studied for 40 years, the Tea Party vote will move towards what establishment can we reform and what establishment can we force restructuring. The Ron Paul message on sound money is a sound principle because it's a basic conservative principle. How much money do you have? How do you spend it? How is your fiscal discipline? And the national security is where Ron Paul is off the reservation on that because it doesn't deal in a real world.
I think there's a recognition that if you believe, for example, in the principles you just articulated, then you should want Barack Obama to not get a second term. And I think that no matter how, well, not how fervently, there are some who I do think still hold on to the hope that Ron Paul could be president. But largely, when you're talking about libertarians, you're talking more broadly about Tea Party people, there is a recognition among them that Romney is the best hope of defeating Obama, and therefore I think they are willing to make certain concessions in order to be part of this Big Ten party you're talking about.
You know, when Marco Rubio won in 2010, during his acceptance speech, during his celebration speech, he said, This is not a symbol of a reversion to republicanism. This is rather a second chance for Republicans to live up to the ideals of which they promised. What I would say is Ron Paul, the Tea Party, the libertarian aspects of conservatism have influenced the Republican Party. They have been brought into that big tent. We can talk about how much more they will be or should be, but the tent has already been expanded. It has already grown. Will we be able to incorporate more libertarianism, more constitutionalism? Yes, I would suspect so, but it has moved a lot in the last 2 years.
Well, and
It's a willing or needed epiphany for the Republican Party, which, frankly, with the evangelicals getting older and the evangelicals, frankly, dying off, we all die. That's just a fact. They need new blood. And if they don't expand and adjust to the American voter, the cultural change in our country, the Republican Party will stagnate. And in the end, you've got to win the election so you can fix the system. Tea Partiers are more pragmatic in that respect.
To Amy's question, which is my favorite aspect of this, can we judge Ron Paul? Ron Paul has been a 3-time presidential candidate, once as a Libertarian and twice now as Republican. Put another way, Ralph Nader, a 6-time presidential candidate, once as a Democrat, twice as a Green Party, and twice as an independent. There's a long list. Lyndon LaRouche ran 8 times, Nader 6, Eugene McCarthy 5, Ron Paul 3, as I said. A long list of these guys. Do we call them patriots, people who want to just keep their parties honest, or pathological? Do we call these people pathological for sort of failing to accept reality that they are not going to become president and may in fact end up being spoilers?
I think we do not call them well, we do not call Ron Paul pathological.
Can I?
I mean, look, I think that people should be willing to celebrate the fact that there are individuals who feel so fervently about, core principles, in this case, sort of constitutionalism and limited government, that they are willing to, in the face of tremendous odds and a large money machine arrayed against them, stick to those core convictions and try to influence the democratic process through the means available to them, even when it looks like it's not going to work out in the end.
But here's the thing, in looking at all of this, Ron Paul didn't win a single primary state. Right. Santorum did. Newt Gingrich did. Don't they have higher standing in front of Ron Paul to be influencing the platform, getting a prime-time speaking slot at the convention in Tampa?
Ron Paul's message is quantifiably different. I think that's the honest
but
response
he had the chance to put it to the Republican voters, and they rejected it.
We keep not voting for him.
But again, I go back to voting habits and how people vote. We have a change right now since 2009 of a more aware American populace. People are learning. They're getting their political education skills up. So they're not just being single-issue voters. They're looking at the landscape of what we have. We have 2 parties, let's face it. We have the Libertarians, we have other independents, whatever the case may be. But the reality is we've got to get the party that has the best shot that we can fix back in power, and then we've got to fix them.
So I think I'd love to answer your question. I think it works like this, that those who get to speak in the party or stand for the party, you don't line them up 1 through 3 according to their popularity. It's just not how it works.
It's about
it works
message.
according to leverage even more than message. And the truth is Ron Paul will be the last man standing in this poker game, and he will have leverage over Mitt Romney. He will be able to the one who can cause havoc. So how do you appease him? Barack Obama doesn't vote for a pro-gay marriage agenda
down the road?
Because he can't get elected by that. But as the leverage changes, he will. It's not because his principles go 1, 2, 3 like this. It's just, Ron Paul has the leverage.
All right.
He played the right poker game.
On the other hand, if Ron Paul is kind of shunted, how much effect will it really have in the long run when the choice is Obama or anybody else?
Right. All right.
Principled.
We'll see.
Not
Fascinating and a little
pathological
that I came across in 1831. The very first national convention was actually by a third party. Scott Baker joins us with tonight's top 3 stories after the break.
Freedom Connector puts the power back in your hands.
This is social organizing. It actually helps connect you with people in your own backyard.
It has no boundaries. We can link with any groups throughout the country.
We're just trying to lower barriers of connection, lower the costs of participating.
It's all about coalition building, teamwork, team building. It's a giant network.
It's in your hands. Log on to Freedom Connector today. Set up your profile, start connecting with other patriots. Make your voice heard and help take our country back.
By age 5, I could drain a three-pointer. By 8, I could outplay opponents twice my size. By 10, I knew someday I would make the pros. Focus, dedication, determination. These are the things that have prepared me for today. But for what tomorrow might bring, I prepared with Food Insurance Emergency Food Supply. It gives me the confidence to face any opposition. Order today at foodinsurance.com.
Listen up, America!
The price of life insurance has gone down 60% over the last 15 years. Many Americans know they need it, and some that have life insurance know they don't have enough. How would your family get by without you? How are you planning for the uncertainties of life? Guarantee your family $200,000, $400,000, $500,000, $750,000 or more with a term life insurance policy that costs up to 3 times less than other competitors. For example, a healthy 40-year-old man can get a $250,000 term life insurance policy for $16 a month. Don't spend more than you have to on term life insurance. Find out how easy it is to protect the ones you love. The quote is free and there are no obligations. Listen up, America. Call now.
Call 800-488-5317. That's 800-488-5317.
Kids in Massachusetts will have to find another way to raise money for school clubs and sports. Bake sales are off the table now that they're banned by the state. It's one of the many stories you'll find on The Blaze, but is it one of tonight's top 3? For that answer, we turn, as usual, to the site's editor-in-chief, Scott Baker. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Amy, how are you? I'm always pro bake sale, pro cupcake.
I was going to say your last name, of course, is so apropos.
And joining you today, by the way, from the Tampa International Airport, where right now this announcer is reminding me that it's a smoke-free airport. And I think Adele is singing in the background. But let's get right to chart and tell you what's going on with the Blaze right now. Top 3 stories and 1 story to boost tonight. And that was the ding of my email. But the number 3 story right now is actually a visually interesting story about the landscape in Arizona. And one of our friend sites, Business Insider, one of their writers took a tour of a site I'd never heard of in the Zion National Park. And there's a particular section in the Coyote Buttes where it's only 20 people get permits to see it every day. And so we have a remarkable slideshow that you can take a look at and see what that looks like tonight. Number 2 story on the Blaze right now is, well, I'm about to get on an American Airlines flight to Dallas in about, well, as soon as I'm done with you. But this is a different story about an American Airlines offer years ago that gave you a lifetime of first-class tickets. It cost a lot of money, but it's a disaster story for American Airlines on how people abused that process over the years. I have no idea what this story is, the number 2 story of the site, but it took off. People are fascinated in the story. Number 1 story on the site right now, I'm in Florida, as I said, the state of Allen West. And Allen West gave a speech recently, and this is the video of the speech. Some are saying it's one of his most inspiring and feisty and forceful speeches yet. I think the catch at the head, at the top, where he tells the conservative audience, "You must be like sharks that smell blood in the water. You must attack." Find out what he means by that by checking out the story on The Blaze. And 1 story to boost here tonight, and it would be from the Detroit area in Michigan, where they're having kind of like a Sharia prom, I guess you could call it. Some of the girls are having a girls-only prom. A lot of details on that one, and I think it's an interesting case about whether you should be allowed to have sort of faith-specific proms. I guess I went to a religious high school. We didn't even have a prom. We weren't allowed to dance. That's very true. In fact, that's we were against premarital sex because it could lead to dancing. That's what I learned.
I see.
But
so
you
were like the inspiration for Footloose or something.
yeah, pretty much. How was your prom?
It was great. Yeah, I broke up with my boyfriend that night, but it was fine.
Wow.
Well, thanks, Scott. We appreciate it.
Really? You're going to end the segment? You could have gone on now. We'd like to hear that story.
Oh, the rest of that story? That's for after the show, for later. All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Shakeups in elections all over Europe and what they mean for us here in the United States. That's after the break.
The TRS Files, True Tax Resolution Stories.
My name is Gibb, and I am not an actor. As a result of my dealings with Tax Resolution Service, my tax burden to the IRS went from more than $35,000 to zero.
If you owe the IRS over $20,000 or more in back taxes, have unfiled returns, or are under audit, call Tax Resolution Services now, 888-7804-TAX, or visit taxresolution.com/GBTV.
Freedom Connector puts the power back in your hands.
This is social organizing. It actually helps connect you with people in your own backyard.
It has no boundaries. We can link with any groups throughout the country.
We're just trying to lower barriers of connection, lower the costs of participating.
It's all about coalition building, teamwork, team building. It's a giant network.
It's in your hands. Log on to Freedom Connector today. Set up your profile, start connecting with other patriots, make your voice heard, and help take our country back.
Bringing a firearm into your home is one of the most important decisions you can make. If you're considering gun ownership, CheaperThanDirt.com is here to help you make a responsible and informed choice. We understand it is a personal decision how you choose to protect your family. We offer thousands of choices of firearms, ammunition, and accessories to suit your individual needs. Be responsible, be proactive, and exercise your Second Amendment right. Find us online at CheaperThanDirt.com. That's CheaperThanDirt.com.
Food independence, emergency preparedness, self-reliance. MyPatriotSupply.com. Get our survival seed vault and feed your family from your own garden for just $37.95. Our non-hybrid heirloom seeds are genuinely American, just like you. Your survival needs and survival seeds are at MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com. Self-reliance. MyPatriotSupply.com.
The second round of voting in France's presidential election was held this weekend, and with 51% of the vote, socialist Francois Hollande narrowly defeated incumbent Nicolas Sarkozy. Weighing in on this with us is James Otteson, professor of economics at Yeshiva University. But first, to set this up, we go to you, Will Kane. It seems like the French are sort of back to the future. Austerity is out, at least politically, and Keynesianism is back in.
I don't know about Keynesianism. We'll see if that's possible. It is back to the future because the last socialist president of France was a good almost 20 years ago now. So it begs the question of what can we expect from the next, now almost current, socialist president of France. He has promised things along the campaign trail, such as that he would be an enemy of finance, to raise the tax rates among the rich up to 75%. And he has certainly called into question whether or not he will be a supporter or he will try to renegotiate the Eurozone austerity agreements with Germany and other European countries. This is a great point to bring in the professor at this point. Let's start with a very, very basic question. Can you just define for us what is austerity?
Well, it's cutting back on spending. I mean, what you have is long-standing negotiated contracts that were made with especially with public sector unions and public sector workers for compensation, benefits, not just in the current day, but going significantly into the future. And if the economy grows at a very good clip every year, indefinitely into the future, these kinds of contracts can be sustained. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and it doesn't happen. And so now what you have is people who have in good faith negotiated contracts. They say we are entitled to this under law, which they are, and the government doesn't have the money to pay it. So the austerity projects are, we're going to just make curbs on some of these benefits we promised. Push back the retirement age, reduce the total amount of benefits, reduce the rate of growth of wages and compensation. Now, that's not actually reducing in real terms the compensation, it's reducing the rate of growth. But people are not happy about that. And partly because they've made plans, life plans, expecting that things will always go up. And it's just like real estate developers in Las Vegas, or in the New York area. If you expect that every single year prices are going to go up, well, you make long-term plans on the basis of that. If one year that doesn't happen, boy, then things go south, and that's
okay. So let's make sure we have this right. During the good times, France made certain promises. It made promises to its citizens through various entitlement programs, and it made promises to its own employees, the civil servants, about what kind of pensions they could have, and that was fine. As you say, during the good times, when the economy was growing at a steady clip. But the minute the economy shifted in a down gear, shifted from third to second, slowed its growth, all of these promises became too much. And that manifested how? Bondholders started saying, France, you don't look so safe now. We're going to raise rates. Tell me that mechanical issue that occurred.
Well, Standard & Poor's did reduce their rating, strip them of their AAA rating in January, so that is true. I mean, there is still a great amount of, well, there's nervousness, first of all, for investors worldwide, but there's a great amount of still optimism. That's the same kind of optimism that the United States has, which is we'll figure something out. We've got, a lot of people working. We've got a lot of smart people who are focusing all their attention and energy on this. Somebody's going to figure something out. So I think the real reckoning for investment has not happened yet.
But I want to bring these guys in just a second, but I want to be clear. But France did come to, it came to Jesus with its austerity program. It had to put in some of these measures.
Under the previous administration,
and
right.
what was that? That was Nicolas Sarkozy. And what kind of programs did he start to put in place for austerity measures?
Well, so this is the deal that was struck. We will curb the benefits. So it specifically defined benefits programs. We'll curb them. We will withstand the protests. We will put up with it in exchange for maintaining the flow of credit for us. And because they're running a deficit in the same way the United States is, a much smaller scale, but they're running a deficit, so they have to also have the credit from international investors. If they don't have that, they can't continue to do what they're doing. So in order to continue to get the good credit, the deal they struck was, you will keep giving us money, keep investing in us in the way you have, and what we'll do is we're going to reduce our spending by introducing the austerity
exactly.
program.
And Will and I have had this conversation before over what's actual austerity. What does it actually look like? Is it just reducing spending, or is it reducing the rate at which spending grows?
It's both, depending on what we're looking at. So it's reducing predictably, what you would guess.
Right.
Is that at the federal level in France, federal spending will continue to increase every year the way it does in other places. It does in the United States. It is every place in every country in Europe.
Right.
That will continue in real dollars. But what they argued about and what they conceded was that the overall amount of growth would reduce as a percentage of gross domestic product. So that has been going down as a proportion of the total amount of wealth produced.
This begs the question then. So austerity in France means spending more money than you have, but just spending less of it successively each year, right? Because, I mean, if you go back to 2004, I mean, to now, as opposed to just 1 year, they're spending $161 billion more now as part of the budget. So spending has just been going up, up, and up, and they're calling it, you know, right now there are economists who are saying, well, austerity has failed. So you curb spending a little bit, it sounds like, for 1 year, and then all of a sudden the French are willing to throw out the current government and say...
you curb future spending. It's not even spending now.
So this is fair to say, though, right? Meaning that the spending is still going up. It's going to continue to go up.
Yes.
And the fights right now, the massive fights, I mean, the reason that there are people waving communist flags in France is because they wanted to just tweak that just a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Hang on, there's a third part of austerity that never happens, and we saw the failure here in the U.S. The third and most important component in any austerity measure is a change in behavior legislatively. You can talk about spending, you can talk about GDP growth, you can talk about a reduction in productivity. France has seen from its 35-hour work week a complete reduction in productivity. Right. But if you don't change the legislative behavior, in other words, collective bargaining structure, same thing in France, then when you get a change in administration, legislatively, you've got the same problem.
So what change did we see, Professor? With Holland, Hollande is, if I want to say it the right way, but I don't want to. Because it's spelled Holland.
Welcome to America.
Holland has been elected. What do we expect to see different from him than we saw from Sarkozy?
Do you mean by his promise, or what he says, or what's actually going to happen? I mean, what he said is we're going to try something that used to be tried and we gave up on. So what we used to do, and we've given up on, the French have given up on, is deficit spending.
Right.
So what we're going to do now, remember that what happens in deficit spending is you're spending more money than you're taking in. It's a fairly clear concept. And one of the things that is always promised is that we're going to create jobs. So we're going to create, in particular, public sector jobs, which is what he's arguing. Now, you know, some free market types and conservatives, I consider myself a free market economist, you argue, well, that on net, there's no real benefit. In fact, there might be a net loss. But there certainly is localized benefit. So what you get when you create public sector jobs is you take money from lots of places. The cost is widely dispersed, and you concentrate it in particular places. So those particular places where you concentrate it, that creates those jobs get created.
So that's the targeted spending.
And so what you can do then is you can point to that and say, look, I created these jobs. We're working on this project. I mean, if you think, there's an analogy I would make. If you go on the beach and you say there's a lot of sand on the beach. Well, I can take a lot of sand and put it in one place and build a big sandcastle. Now, if I say, look at that great big sandcastle I built. Yes. Now, where did the sand come? Well, it came from all the other places. I didn't create any new sand. No new sand was created. But it sure looks like it because there's something you can point to. And that's the kind of, you know, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a shell game that goes on.
It's a big shell game because here's the problem. Eventually, the tide comes in. That tide is the cyclical change in the economy. And France being part of the Eurozone is another big thing. We have the Eurozone and the Euro, which is a false bottom currency. It has no real basis for its existence. It was made of an idea that we're going to bind nations together. Well, Germany is not going to go along with this. Angela Merkel has made it quite clear that Germany is not going to bail out France or anyone else. And Germany may as well do what they couldn't do otherwise in controlling the finance in Europe.
So, Professor, I have a question about looking at austerity and other approaches. One of the big reasons why the French, you know, went crazy over austerity measures is this 35-hour work week, which Nicolas Sarkozy was supposed to have put an end to, but apparently didn't entirely. So that was very symbolic. It also interacted with the idea of the reduced efficiency, productivity of the French economy. Are there regulatory things like the 35-hour work week, labor regulations that can be done that would help sort of free up this economy and grow the French economy?
Oh, there are lots and lots of things, but they're going to entail stepping on people's toes. And they're going to entail stepping on people's toes who have become not just sort of culturally accustomed to having the sort of lifestyle they have, but also legally accustomed to it. They're legally entitled to certain benefits. These are defined benefits to which they are legally entitled. So what you could see is a kind of there are various things that might happen, but one of them I wouldn't be surprised to see is an explosion of litigation. You're going to see not just the protesting, which the French are very good at, but they're also going to start filing lawsuits, which is a quintessentially American thing to do because they are entitled to these under existing law.
Where's the money supposed to come from in order to keep the entitlement going? I mean, because they can't just fire up the euro printing press, right? And there's no way that mathematically they're going to be able to do this by just soaking the rich, right? So where's the theory where's the money?
The laws of arithmetic apply in France too, I mean, but there is a pervasive. But there's a pervasive sense. What I was about to say was that if we can do this for a little while longer, and if we do it for a little while longer, what will happen is the global economy will pick up, and things will become better for us. Because remember, nearly 70% of the economy in France is in one way or another related to tourism. That's it. I mean, the main thing they're doing now is tourism. They are one of the leading tourist destinations for the world. If the global economy picks up, well, what will happen? People will come to France and spend money. So there's a sense in which they think, well, if we just sort of hold on a little while longer, then the money will start pouring in.
You made a distinction between what Hollande has promised, and what he can actually do, and the laws of arithmetic apply in France as well. Yeah. So tell me if I'm wrong on this. So the voters of France have said, we don't want to deal with austerity. We didn't like it.
Who wants to deal with austerity?
But there's also another vote, and that's the vote of the potential bondholders, Yep. We don't think you're such a good bet anymore, France. Right. So that's the next vote we watch for, and the one that Hollande really has to answer to, right? So, and the credit, as you talked about, those willing to extend France credit largely come from Germany. And so how long will Germany continue to see France as a good bet? My question is, if he can't fire up the printing presses, he has no way to print money, and he needs deficit spending, then the EU's over. They have to end the EU.
I think that's one potential scenario, and it will be a very difficult one. I mean, you mentioned Merkel. This puts Merkel in a very difficult position because she had negotiated with Sarkozy a pretty unfavorable. I mean, look, I have this conversation with my teenage children. Nobody wants austerity. I mean, nobody voluntarily says, yeah, I want to make do with less. That's a good thing to do. You get used to a certain kind of lifestyle. You begin very easily to start feeling habituated to it and then accustomed to it and then entitled to it. Nobody wants that. But what you got from Merkel and Sarkozy was a team because they're the two strongest economies in Europe. They both said the only way we're going to get out of this mess is by actually reining things in. And now that Sarkozy is out, she's on an island. So the question is, what is she going to do? I mean, it's a very difficult position for her to be in.
So and the two countries in the Eurozone that are effectively able to decide whether places like Italy, Spain, and Greece will get bailed out, well, at least one of them is unwilling to live by arithmetic. That's what it seems
part
like
of what
right
this
now.
election has shown.
And the other one, by the way, because of their growth, not only in Frankfurt, in the tech market, and other areas, they're going to say to Merkel, on the other hand, we're not going to go down that path and lose our bond rating. They can't go to an Italy-like situation where it's a 7.3% and growing.
So
it's just not possible.
I'm not understanding at all about, I guess, what the new president-to-be is promising, is that he promises to bring the deficit down to 0 in 2017, but he's going to grow by getting into deficit spending? I mean, how do you square that?
There's a little bit of alchemy going on there. I'm not sure that squares. So I mean, the way you could potentially square is if, for some reason, there's enormous fiscal growth in the country. So productivity just starts growing. The economy just starts growing.
Like Jack's magic beans.
Well,
if the Eurozone breaks up, that's probably not going to happen.
They start drilling for oil
Absent
in
that
Alsace,
huge growth,
Lorraine.
we have disappointed French voters or a broken up EU. Fair?
I think we would have both of those.
Fascinating stuff. Professor, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, the Island of Misfit Stories is up next when we come back.
Aide said the Obamas were concerned about money the president's books could only sell so many copies, and it would be years until he could write more, and the First Lady could write her own. From vacation rental homes big enough to accommodate the Secret Service to all the personal entertaining they did at the White House, their lifestyle had grown fearsomely expensive.
Think about that. He's concerned about the family finances. When they don't have to pay room and board, they don't pay anything on the house, they don't pay for their food, they don't pay for their travel, they don't pay for anything. He's made $11 million, and he's concerned because she's spending so much. It's put the family finances in jeopardy.
But
the
that's amazing. Who
Romneys-
wrote that? Jody Cantor from the New York Times.
The New York Times.
I want my kids to inherit an America even greater than the one that I inherited.
Would you rather have Scott Walker or Vladimir Putin?
I'd rather have anybody than Scott Walker.
Greece is awesome.
Yeah.
I've been to France. I've been to England. I think they're very awesome.
Europe! Europe! What do you think of Governor Walker's economic policies?
I have some questions about his policies, yep. Speaking of questionable policies.
I'm not a pervert. I'm European.
This has huge ramifications on the union movement for the future.
Inspired by our founders' principles. Made for the people, by the people, right here in America. 1791 is putting single mothers back to work in an effort to rebuild, with net profits being donated to Glenn's new charity initiative, Mercury One. It starts with one person, one community, one company making a difference. 1791, the original blueprint. It's time to wear your heart on your sleeve.
Now children don't only have memories to scar them, they also have video. It's our first Misfit up tonight. Will, what do you got?
I want to introduce you to Zach. Zach is a 2.5-year-old little boy. He's a big dinosaur lover, and he lives in McKinney, Texas, by the way, only 30 minutes from where I grew up. And in McKinney, there's something called the Herd Natural History Museum and Wildlife Sanctuary. Well, Zach's parents took him to see some dinosaurs. Let's take a look.
Is it T-Rex? Is it? Are you scared?
Now,
How did they get a dinosaur in that
That
park?
was an animatronic dinosaur. Fact his parents didn't make him aware of. They sat there and egged him on that it was real. Do you see the dinosaur, Zach? Do you see it? Look at it. What is that?
Is that a raptor? I couldn't really
There was a T-Rex.
Oh, it was a T-Rex, a little T-Rex, sorry.
Yeah. And then he said,
T-Rex.
are you scared?
A mini T-Rex, if you will.
I got to be honest with you. It's fun to scare your kids.
That is so evil.
But it's
But it is
evil,
fun.
but it is true. And any parent that plays holier than thou on this,
But did you see
they're
that?
lying
It
to you.
reminds me of the Jimmy Kimmel stunt where he told viewers, parents, to give their kids terrible Christmas
Saw
gifts,
this.
like wrap up a
It was a
banana
great gift.
and give it, and then videotape their reactions, which are like amazing. And then he played them on TV. So evil. Parents are evil. Buck.
Some of you may be watchers of Friday Night Lights, which is based on, show, also a movie, based on a book by H.G. Buzz Bissinger. Well, he's written an article that I think will get some people talking. It was in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, and he's saying that we should ban college football. He lays out a case, and this is a guy who spent a lot of time in Texas, West Texas, right? Will?
Yes,
That's right, West Texas, around high school football, I should say, but certainly knows a bit about the game. And he was just saying, look, the average student doesn't benefit from these programs. In a lot of cases, they're incredibly expensive. They're losing money for a lot of these schools. He says that 43% of the 120 schools in the Football Bowl subdivision lost money last year. And he just says that it distracts students from actually learning. And he even says that this is something the NFL benefits from because there's really no minor league football. And so college football, he's saying, is essentially used as sort of the minors, which is really not fair, not the way it's supposed to be. So he's saying the NFL needs to step up here. There needs to be a development program, a minor league system, sort of like in baseball, and really change things up. And I don't know. I think he's like not really that well liked in some parts of Texas already.
Yeah.
I don't know if this
well
is
liked in a lot of places. And
I don't think this is going to help him very much, but I did think it was interesting that he's willing to lay out this argument.
On an emotional level, I want to reject this so thoroughly, and I love college football. But I'm going to be honest with you, he makes some really, really good points. You have to ask yourself, who does college football serve? I know it serves me. I know it serves you. I know I like watching
I play college football.
But you know, does it serve the athlete? Does it serve the students to go to the school that don't participate? It takes money from a lot of things.
It does
Coaches at public universities getting multi-million-dollar salaries. I mean, this is big business. Never mind the TV rights and everything else.
But you know what? He contradicts himself because the NFL, which is an American enterprise, employs literally millions in its subsidiaries. Where does the NFL get them? They're not going to build a farm league.
Why not?
So there is a
Baseball
benefit. There is a benefit. Well, there's a difference to football and baseball. Baseball, multiple games. NFL, 1 game a week. So you have to look at the sports and how they operate. For the college football argument, I don't want to hand the coach at Rutgers millions of dollars to lose. I think that's something the universities need to do on their own. They can bring the costs down. I think this guy's was he the kid that got beat up in high school a lot?
I think he would get beat up in some parts of West Texas.
Hey, I lived in Texas, and look, I've been to Friday Night Lights. There are high school games with 20,000 and football games with 80,000. I mean, this happens all over the country. It's just a part of America. Get over it.
All right, SC.
Well, to switch gears, a Virginia corrections officer by the name of Elizabeth Rosenbaum, she made a big mistake. She left her gun belt, which included a .38 caliber revolver and ammunition and pepper spray, on a table in the bathroom at the Virginia Department of Transportation, and was not really disciplined for it, even though earlier she was working with a different crew, and some of her employees found her sleeping on the job. What I find to be most offensive about this story is not that she left her gun behind, but it's that she left her cell phone behind. I would know the second that phone was out of my hands that something was amiss. I would have gone back for it. That she didn't makes me question her sanity.
Wow, where'd it go on that one?
Misplace your gun, I get it. Misplace your cell phone, no thanks.
All right.
That's crazy.
Well, we can tie it into the previous story. In Texas, you never misplace your gun.
Right.
You could lose your cell phone.
Got it. So this guy, I think, lost his mind. A man who... Oh, I'm sorry, David.
I believe in ladies first.
Go ahead.
Mine's an object lesson, and I'm a fan of object lessons. You have a 6th century mentality, a country where it's dangerous. Why do you go there? I understand that when it comes to contractors in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and those areas, they work there. Our military goes there with a much different model. And Warren Weinstein, who is now unfortunately being held, this is a guy who's been a captive of the Taliban. Well, now they put out a video that says, I want to appeal to the president. Well, the U.S. doesn't negotiate with terrorists. That causes a problem. Warren, you're in tough times. But for all the other people who consider going there, you might want to rethink this.
And to be clear, you're talking about Pakistan.
Pakistan,
right.
Yeah.
And was he there sightseeing?
No, he's been there for 7 years.
Right.
He's been working there, and I'm sure he's doing a good job. But look, the bottom line on this is we've got to make decisions, and don't expect that the country's going to come chasing after you every time if you get into a bad situation. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We can't set a precedent. So consider that your risk is your own when you take it. And unfortunately, there have been beheadings.
Sure.
There have been people from different countries, expats that have been taken over there. And this is their operational model.
Dangerous place.
Wow. You're tough. You call that other guy a beta male, and you're telling these other people you're on your own.
I'm a realist. I live in the real world. I mean, if you've got people who will kidnap you and teach a 12-year-old boy how to saw your head off, you might want to rethink other job options. I'm sorry for his family, but this is reality.
Wow. All right, so now
I'm a
my story.
Debbie Downer. Is this?
All right, so this is a very weird, bizarre story that I found so interesting. A man impersonated his dead mom as a part of a real estate scam. He was convicted of fraud last Thursday. He faces up to 83 years in prison. And we have a photo of this man dressed up as his mother. This is so creepy.
Wow.
Including wig, nail polish, the whole thing. He would even show up to meetings using an oxygen tank like his dead mother used to use. I guess you could say that the only good thing about this is that his mother wasn't alive to see it. And oddly, his name is Thomas Parkins.
No!
So close to Tony
Perkins. That's
there
amazing.
you go. That's it for us tonight. Make sure you're back here tomorrow for our special report showdown. Wisconsin will have the story the mainstream media won't tell you behind the recall election of Governor Scott Walker. Good night.